Hello and welcome to Lifecentral Church Online. It is brilliant to see you with us today. My name is Laura.
And my name is Andy.
And we are going to be with you for a little while today. We are here based in Halesowen, but we're one church in 4 locations. So we're in Halesowen, Rowley Regis, Hagley, and also we have a church in Durrës in Albania. So good morning, hello to you guys if you are watching with us. We also want to say a massive, massive welcome if you're new today. If you've never tuned in before, if you're watching on demand, if you're watching live, welcome. We are so thrilled that you are with us and we are delighted to be with you in your home.
Yeah, and we have got lots of people called online pastors ready to engage with you. Now that might sound a little bit strange, but basically it's some of our Lifecentral people who just want to engage with you and they would love to pray for you. So if you're watching on our church online platform, you can request live prayer and that will open like a direct message chat with one of our online pastors and they would love to pray for you. But you can also request prayer. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, or you're watching this on demand, you can request somebody to pray for you. And basically in the video description or dropping in the chat now will be a little link that you can fill out and that will come to us here at the church and we would love to pray for you in whatever you want us to pray for.
Yeah, and we have some things happening today that we want to tell you about as well, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
So at 4 o'clock today, and my weather app is telling me it may well rain at 4 o'clock today if you're in the Midlands. So this is good timing with time as well. We have our Kids Tribes Live. So at 4 o'clock today, Kids Tribes Live. That will be on the Lifecentral Kids YouTube and Facebook. So make sure you are in, you are dry, and you guys can engage as a family and have some fun.
That is going to be epic. And coming up later on in the service, we have got an announcement that we want to share with you that's really, really important. So stick around, don't tune out. You need to know this for the next few weeks. So please don't miss out on that announcement at the end. But today we are launching a brand new series called Search History. And when we think of search history, we think of things that people look for on the internet, on things like Google and YouTube. And we've got an amazing new set for our new series. And, you know, in this season, people have Googled lots of different things. And there's been some interesting searches. And we want to look at the things that people search for on the internet. But not just that. We want to look at what Jesus might say about some of those big topics. So you're going to hear from lots of different people. Leon is going to be speaking today, but today we are focusing in on what does Jesus say about racism. And right throughout this series, we think you might be surprised and hear some unexpected things about what Jesus says about these topics. Even if you're a Jesus follower, I think you will be surprised about what you hear.
Yeah, and we thought we would have some fun with this to start off with. So, often when you type something into a search engine, whether it be Google or YouTube, what will happen is you will begin to type a question and then there'll be a drop down underneath, and that drop down will suggest what the rest of your sentence might be. It will try and finish the sentence for you. And often those suggestions are based on the most popular things that other people have typed that start with that sentence. So we thought we would begin to have a look at some things that people have in their search history.
Let's have a look then. I think
they're going to come up, aren't they?
Yeah, let's have a look. So the first one.
The first one is what would so we have got here, what would aliens look like? It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I love the next one though. What would a chair look like if your knees bent the other way? I can't.
Like a weird U shape.
Yeah,
surely.
I can't. My brain can't comprehend that one. What would Audrey do? A question I ask myself regularly.
I think we need to release those wristbands, you know,
yeah.
WWAD.
Yeah. Audrey has wisdom. And then finally, interesting choice, what would an engineer use a breadboard for? I mean, I assume engineers still eat bread,
yeah,
so
probably cutting bread.
Making a sandwich, yeah.
So we have a look at our next one coming up on the screen. This is why are there, and it's a little bit depressing because it says why are the dolphins dying?
Very sad.
Sad dolphins.
Yeah.
Why are the bees dying?
Yeah.
Why are the oceans salty? And then finally, a question that we all should be asking, why on earth are the Kardashians famous?
Yeah, it's a worldwide question. Next up, we have, and this is one I feel quite passionate about, unicorns. Unicorns in the Bible, they're in there, you can find them. Unicorns are real.
That should be like one of the topics in the search history
next
series.
Week.
Where are unicorns in the Bible?
Yeah.
And Leon can do like a big exposition of unicorns.
Ideally dressed as a unicorn.
Oh, so
preferably.
Good. Let's make that happen.
Unicorns are real. Final one, kind of mean. Unicorns are jerks.
They are.
Well, I
They're
don't.
just,
I
they're
don't
just
know
fancy
enough.
horses.
No, I don't know enough unicorns to say that about their character. I will not. I will not say that about them.
And last one is Google will. And let's have a look at some of the answers. Google, will you marry me? I mean,
You've got to be.
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
desperate to take that.
Yeah.
Google, will you be my friend? Again, pretty desperate.
Yeah, I'm sad.
Google will not load. Oh my goodness! Imagine if Google wouldn't load, we would not know.
I would have no knowledge.
Anything. And then finally, Google will take over the world. And it really does feel like Google may one day take over the world. But you know, through this Search History series, we want to focus on what Jesus says. And you know, this is looking at stories of Jesus and who Jesus is and the things that he taught us. And so we thought we would kick off the series and our service with a song that is all about Jesus. Hey, all of our songs are all about Jesus. But this song is called What a Beautiful Name. And it's all about the name of Jesus and how powerful it is. And we did some creative stuff. We filmed some of our worship team at home. We hope you enjoy this piece. If you're one of those people that stands up and sings, then stand up and sing. But we want you to engage with who Jesus is by using this song and singing along with us. This is What a Beautiful Name.
You are the word at the beginning. Hi, my name's Jodie. Let me tell you about my history with Jesus. I became a Christian and started coming to church when I was 16, but it took me the best part of a decade really to figure out what it actually means to be a Christian and how we live and serve Jesus. Even though I knew and had been taught for a really long time that it's not supposed to be about what we do and how good we are, I'd held myself to unachievable, holy expectations, if you like, and inevitably, time and time again, I messed up, and sometimes I messed up really, really badly. But it was during a time when I felt like I had nothing to offer the world, nothing to offer God, and not much really to live for, that God did something. He answered a prayer that I'd had in my heart for a really long time, and he gave me a son. And he gave me new life, really, in the form of my son, Peter, who's now nearly 3. And it was the night that I brought Peter home from hospital. I remember I was sat in my bed, holding him in my arms, looking down at his newborn face. And I remember I was crying, and I was saying out loud, thank you, God, for giving me a son. And it was that moment that I heard God say to me, I'd already given you my own. And I just got it. And suddenly, it just made sense. And I knew what God's love for me felt like. And I didn't become a perfect person overnight, but I felt free from the expectations that I'd put on myself and the unachievable standards. And now nothing's really been the same since. I just live and walk it freely, knowing that I'm forgiven, redeemed and loved.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for connecting and being part of our service together with us. Wasn't that so powerful? So stunning. I'm sat here with just a handful of people in a big empty building, but I was so moved by that incredibly powerful song about the name of Jesus. Thank you to our musicians, and not only our musicians and singers, but our technicians who worked so hard putting that creativity together. It was so powerful. And then that incredibly powerful story from Jodie as well. And every week you're going to hear a story from an individual, just a normal, ordinary person who has a search history with Jesus, and Jesus has changed their lives. And that's what this series is about that I'm about to launch today, Search History. And, we often think about search history as what we do on the internet. But, when you search through history, there is one name, there is one person who is by far the most dominant person in the whole of human history. And that person is Jesus Christ. But one of the most misunderstood persons in the whole of human history is also Jesus Christ. And I think, some of the people that actually have affected that misunderstanding have been the church. Because often we want to communicate who Jesus is, but sometimes we really get it wrong. Like this church who wanted to say Jesus cares, but the way they communicated it, it came up with this message. It's not quite the message that they wanted, was it? They wanted to say Jesus cares, but actually it reads something totally different. And then there's this other one from this other church. Don't let worries kill you. Let the church help. I'm sure they didn't really mean that. And then this one, which is a little scary, the next one, don't make me come down there, God. Hey, that's not God, okay? But this final one, I really like this. This is going to key into what we want to say today. And it says this, if you're into Twitter world, you'll understand this. Tweet others as you would like to be tweeted, okay? It's trouble with your R's there. But, tweet others as you like to be tweeted. The reality is, this is our subject today. What does Jesus say about racism? That's what we're looking at today. What does Jesus say about racism? Now, my dilemma with this is that this is a very controversial subject. It's emotional, it's nuanced, it's divisive, it's complex, it's evolving. A few years ago, I was in India, and I was in a car with some friends, pastor and his family, and we were traveling to Bangalore, hours and hours in a car, and we were talking away, and they're kind of my age, and they said, oh, we used to love that sitcom in the 70s called Mind Your Language. And I thought about it, whoa, that's like, we would look back at that now and we would say that's really racist, and, like English people, mimicking Indian accents. But the Indian guy said to me, no, we love it. And then the guy said to this, could you do that? Will you do that accent? When you take off the Indian? And I said, no, I can't do it. That's racist. And for hours, he made me do that in the car. And so it's an evolving, complex, nuanced issue that we're talking about today. Fortunately, Lifecentral guys, I know that we can handle this conversation in a mature, reasoned way. We're not going to get upset. We're not going to get offended because we are bigger than that. Now, if we were in one of those kind of situations where we were like kind of a right-wing church or a left-wing church, and can I just say, I'm an Aston Villa fan, all right? So we don't have any right-wing, we don't have any left-wing, and we have nothing down the center either, okay? So I'm confident we can share this conversation together. If we were very right-wing or left-wing, then it's easy, because you just say what that wing wants to hear, and then it's fine. But we're not like that. We're in a much more mature, rounded situation where we have people with lots of different views. But we're going to handle it in a mature way and in a thoughtful way today. So, some caveats for the conversation. Firstly, if you don't like what I say, it's okay. But let your love be louder than your opinions. Secondly, if you don't think I say all that I should say or need to say, you'd be absolutely right. Because in 25 minutes, I can't say everything. But hopefully, here's a start. So what is racism? The dictionary defines it as this: prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism towards people based on their race or ethnicity. But don't stop there, because it also goes on to define it like this: an inability or refusal to recognize rights, needs, dignity, or value of others from different race or ethnicity. You see, the first definition is about hatred towards others. And most of us would say, yes, I'm not a racist. But racism isn't just hatred towards others, guys. It's when we refuse to acknowledge the value and the dignity of others who are different from us. Muhammad Ali said, hating people because of their color is wrong. And it doesn't matter which color does the hating, it's just plain wrong. And we'd all agree with that, I'm sure. But racism is much more than just that. Where does racism come from? I think it comes from fear. I think it comes from a fear of difference. I want to say, most white people have a fear of black men. Now that's quite a strong statement. I think it's true. In fact, a few years ago, again, I was in another country. I was in South Africa, and I'd been there with a team, and the team had gone home, and I was staying for a further week to do some teaching and some training in the camp that I was on. And I borrowed one of the cars from the team to drive to a mall where I was going to just walk around the mall, have a coffee, do some preparation. And as I was driving down this street, in this road in South Africa, I noticed a car, and I pulled around the car, but what I didn't notice was another car coming really fast down the hill. And as I pulled out to swerve around the car, I didn't look, and this car hit me. And as the car hit me on the side of the car, this car pulled over, and out of this car got 4 huge black African men who were angry. Now, would I have had fear if they were 4 white men? Probably, but all I can tell you from the honesty of my human heart is that there was a fear in me. There was a fear in me, and it wasn't just because I'd hit some and there were 4 men. I think there was something deeper than that as well. And you see, the reality is that facts rarely replace fear. It's like if you're fearful of flying, facts don't replace that fear. It doesn't matter to you that you can read on Google or wherever, that actually planes don't come out of the air through turbulence. That just doesn't happen. But even though that's fact, it rarely replaces the fear. Experience replaces the fear. So I've got a big question for you to think about right at the start of our time together today, and it's this: how do people who don't look like you experience you? This is a question that a guy called Andy Stanley from North Point in Atlanta, it's a church that we have a very close relationship and friendship with now. And of course, in Georgia and in the south of America and all across America, this is a huge issue, but this is a global issue. It's not just an American issue. How do people who don't look like you experience you? And you know, if you're not a follower of Jesus today, that's probably enough for you to think about, just that one question right there. But if you are a follower of Jesus, there's loads more for you to think about. What does Jesus want to say? What does Jesus say about racism? I believe he'd say two things. The first thing is this: all people are created in the image of God. All people are created in the image of God. The question is, do we see it? Guys, we're all created in the image of God. You know, I don't believe that God is colorblind. I don't. I believe that God does see color, and he loves it. He loves the richness and the variety and the difference. And I just think that we're called to love all that God has created. And ultimately, it's the whole planet. We are called to love the planet that he created. We are called to love his creation, to steward it and to look after it. But you know, the pinnacle of God's creation is mankind. In all of its richness, in all of its diversity, in all of its color. And we are called to love one another. You know, in the Jewish context, you know, the massive deal for the Jewish nation has always been to please God and to make God happy by the way they live their life. And often for the Jewish mindset, it was all about keeping the laws, the 10 commandments, and then all the other laws that the Jewish people came up with. But when Jesus came along, he was so radical that he took all the laws, the 10 commandments, and all the other laws that the Jewish people came up with. And he said, hey, let's just boil it down to one. And he called it a new command. And you find it in John, in the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verse 34 to 35, where Jesus says this. He says, a new command I give you, love one another. Now that doesn't seem new, because right back in the history of the Old Testament, it was love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul and your strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Here's where the new bit is. Love one another as I have loved you. That's the radical new bit. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. This was radical because before this, it was all about keeping the 10 commandments. But you know, there's a guy in the New Testament called Paul, the Apostle Paul. You might have heard of him. And he used to be called Saul. Here's the truth. Before Saul became a follower of Jesus, he kept all the 10 commandments, and he was a racist, violent killer. Until the moment that he met Jesus face to face. Because you see, this is the thing. Guys, this is what marks us out as followers of Jesus. Not what we believe, but the fact that we love one another as Jesus has loved us. How's that? Well, I want you to imagine that the circle that Jesus had around him. And in that circle, there were lots of people that were not like him. There were men and women. There were rich and poor. There were black and white. There were tax collectors and sinners and scribes and Pharisees. And they were all different. They weren't all his people. They were people. And the amazing thing is that Jesus said to them on one occasion, hey guys and girls, lean in a little bit. Didn't say that, I'm just kind of making that for effect. But he said, lean in because I want to tell you something new. And you know what he said? He said, hey, I have called you friends. I've called you friends. I think what Jesus will say about racism is this. Number one, all people are created in the image of God. But number two, I think he would say this, belief is not enough. Guys, belief is not enough. You can believe that in your heart, but that is not enough, Jesus would say. You know, I found in my research something really fascinating, which has really helped me. And I want to share it with you guys today or wherever you're watching this. And it's called the racism continuum. Okay, because I think that, and you can see it now on the screen underneath me, and I've got to kind of get all this right, really. As you see, I think many of us in this racism debate right now, we're saying this statement, we're saying, I'm not a racist. And I get that, although I would say there's a little bit of racism in every single one of us, if we're honest, whatever our color or ethnicity. But the goal is not to not be a racist. The goal is much, much, much more beyond that. And so if you start here with racist, okay, then what happens is that maybe you move to the next stage, which this guy's called agnostic, where maybe you're like, well, I don't hate other people, but I'm not really bothered. Or maybe you move towards the cynic. There's lots of cynics right now. You know, and I'll speak into some of that in a little while. Or maybe we move a little bit closer to this term seeker, where we're seeking to see what's going on the inside of us. And then you come in the middle point to what this guy is called conversion. And that's not conversion to faith. That's conversion to the idea and to the belief that all people are created in the image of God. And I'm going to move, not just to not be a racist, because that's not the goal, but I'm going to move to something much deeper and more profound than that. And that's right at the end of this spectrum, which is reconciler. And then maybe when you get that conversion, that it's not just about what I believe, but it's also about what I do, then maybe you take some baby steps. Maybe you become a child. Maybe you become a teenager or an adult. Ultimately, where Jesus wants you and I to be is obviously not racist. But it's not in the middle. It's at the end where we become a reconciler, where we move along this continuum. And I know, having looked at this, I know that I'm not at that end yet. I've got a long way to go when it comes to this. But I know something. If I'm a follower of Jesus, if I believe that every single person is created in the image of God with intrinsic value and worth, regardless of the color of their skin or regardless of their ethnicity or their background, then I want to move along that continuum and I want to end up where Jesus wants me to end up. Not just not a racist, but a reconciler, wanting to bring people together. That's God's great heart and plan for planet Earth. Jesus came, the Bible says, to destroy all the barriers. And Paul, in his letters, he talks about destroying the wall of hostility that were between us as human beings. You know, Nelson Mandela said it this way: no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, then they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. But guys, I want to get really practical with you today. And I want to say some big things, okay? And the first one is this: it is not enough not to be a racist. I hear so many people at the moment just saying and posting on social media, I'm not a racist. It's not racist to do that. It's not enough not to be a racist. You see, if you were to see someone abusing someone, you wouldn't say, well, I'm not an abuser. No, you would become anti-abuse. We're just not a bully. We become anti-bullying. We don't want to be racist. We want to become anti-racist. It is not enough to not be a racist. And when you begin to see it and you begin to feel it and you begin to speak out against it, then maybe actually you discover that there's a little bit more racism in us than we'd like to acknowledge. I'm quoting all the greats today, but Martin Luther King Jr., he said this, one of his most famous quotes: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine, Lee, who's in the church, he's one of our elders and one of our worship leaders as well, and we went on a trip to the States to go to some conferences, and we realized that there was one conference in Atlanta and one conference in Birmingham, Alabama. And then we realized before we knew that, and it was 2018, and it was 60 years after Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. And so we thought, this is interesting because we're very fascinated by American history, the Civil War, and civil rights. And so what we did when we went to these conferences is we went on a little bit of a pilgrimage as well. So we started in Atlanta, went to Martin Luther King's home and the church where his father was the pastor. Then we ended up going to Birmingham to the conference. And that's where he spent time in prison. And then we went on a bit of a road trip. And we ended up here at this place called Selma Bridge. And if you've ever seen the film Selma, you'll understand and you'll know that this was a play in the civil rights movement where Martin Luther King and many other people marched across this bridge. And I know that there's lots of marches and protests been going on recently in our culture. And it's evoked all kinds of views and thoughts. And I want to just say a couple of things about it. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff that we could say, and I'm not condoning violence, but I am also saying, hey, guys, we have to look a little bit beneath what we're seeing, and rather than just jumping to opinions, let's listen a little bit more to what's going on underneath. See, what's going on the underneath for young people in our culture, who many of us say, our millennials, oh yeah, they're the soft generation. That's what many older people say. They don't believe in much, and yet many, many thousands and thousands of millennials, black and white, put their own safety at risk because there was something deeper and stronger at work, and they were fearful not only for their own lives, but in many cases for the lives of other people. And so there's all these kind of arguments, but let's not forget that there's emotion, and that emotion comes from somewhere, comes from some very real issues. And I want to talk a little bit about that this morning or today. But how does Jesus open up this idea that it's not enough not to be a racist? Well, one of the things that Jesus was a master at was telling stories. And one day a guy came to him and said, hey, Jesus, how do we get right with God? And Jesus said, let me tell you a story. And he told a story, and it's in Luke chapter 10, verse 25 to 37. I'm not going to read it, but you can read it. The verse will stay on the screen for a little bit. But it's a really well-known story, and maybe you remember it from Sunday school. Let me tell it to you. This man is on a trip from Jerusalem to Jericho. And on that road, it's a dangerous road, and he knew that. He gets mugged. And he gets mugged and robbed and beaten and left for dead. But it's okay because there's two people just like him on the road. They're from his tribe, if you like. They're his color. They're his people. There's a priest and there's a Levite. But they see him and they walk past him. And maybe they say, well, I'm not a mugger. Well, I didn't beat him up. And they do nothing. But then a third man comes along, and he's not like this man. He's not from this man's tribe. He's not from this man's people. He's not from this man's group. He's maybe a different. In fact, the Bible says he's a Samaritan. And the Samaritans and the Jews were like enemies. You see, racism isn't just a color issue. It's a people issue. I've spent time in India with the caste system, and in South Africa and Rwanda and the Balkans and Ireland, and race is this issue. But here's a Samaritan who was an enemy of the Jew, and yet this man looked at this Samaritan. He didn't ask, well, what was he doing on the road anyway? Well, did he look after himself? Was he sensitive? He didn't ask any of those questions. He literally just gave of himself. And he not only took this man at his own cost and expense, but he put him on a horse and he helped him, and he took him off the road and put him back on his feet again. And Jesus says, hey, who's the one that most pleases God? And of course the man says, it's obvious, it's the one who showed mercy. The Samaritan didn't ask what this man had done or why he was on the road. He knew he was not like him. He didn't say, well, I didn't beat him up. I'm not a robber. You see, it's not enough to not be a racist. We have to become, guys, anti-racist, which means doing something. And what's shocking to the listeners is that Jesus is bigging up the Samaritan, their mortal enemy. You see, I wonder what could happen in our world if actually, what would happen when racism becomes gracism? And I want to use that as a little play of words. What could happen, guys, if when racism becomes gracism? You see, grace is when we extend mercy when it's not deserved. It's almost like it's what Jesus has done for us. Mercy, if God just gave me mercy, that means he wouldn't punish me for my sin, but he didn't just give me mercy, he gave me grace. He gave me what I don't deserve, more than I deserve. What happens when racism becomes gracism? When we extend to those who are not like us grace as well as mercy. I think we could change the world. Many of you have seen this picture, this photograph that's going to come up hopefully now on the screen of this man carrying a protester. And can I say, this would have been as powerful if it was a white man carrying a black man as it is a black man carrying a white man, because there's something powerful about gracism, extending to someone else who's not like you what maybe you think they don't deserve, but neither did you deserve it. But when we extend it, it could literally change the world. Let me just speak into Black Lives Matter for a moment. I know this is very, very emotional and evocative and controversial. You know, I'm not talking about the organization Black Lives Matter, okay? Because there's some extremism in there and there's some other agendas and motives. I get all that. But I think we're getting sidetracked by all of that and we're missing out on the real issue when we get sidetracked by that. Guys, this is where we need to stay open. Please. This is where we need to stay open and not get defensive. I see so much on social media that is defensive right now. Guys, can I just say, this is not an attack on white people. This is a cry for help. Guys, if you're white today, this is not an attack on white people. In the vast majority of cases, it's not. It's a cry for help. And you say, yeah, but all lives matter. Of course they do. Nobody is saying that they don't. Let me give you 3 examples of why I think this is so important, and I'm going to be passionate about this because this is important to me. The first one is my own situation. We have 2 children. One of them has what we used to call special needs, okay? He's one of the most complex young men in the area. Simeon, he's 26, last Saturday. He has autism, he has ADHD, he has learning disability, he has epilepsy, he self-harms. He's just a very... Now, when we used to call kids like Simeon, when we used to say they have special needs, there's a whole bunch of people that started to say, you can't do that because all children are special. Well, of course they are. But when you just say all children are special and you can't say that my child has special needs, what that does to me is it says, hey, the issues that you're dealing with, the pain and the grief that you're going through, I'm minimizing that because all of us are special. Of course, every child is special, but there's something unique about certain individuals and their situation. It's not an attack, it's a cry for help. The start of lockdown, my mother died, and just a few days before lockdown, we had her funeral. Imagine if you came to my mom's funeral and said, hey, you shouldn't mourn because my mom died as well, and all moms are special. Well, of course they are. But in that moment, it's my mom's funeral. Jesus puts it this way. He says, he told another story in Luke chapter 15. He said, hey, there's this shepherd. He's got 100 sheep. And everyone recognizes that. Now, how many of those 100 sheep are special to the shepherd? All of them. But Jesus says, hey, this shepherd, he leaves 99 and he goes after the one. Now, someone could have said, are you saying the 99 aren't special? Are you saying it's only the one? No, of course. But the one is in peril. The one could die. That's the heart behind Black Lives Matter. I really genuinely believe that for the vast majority of people, it's not an attack on everybody else. It's a cry for help. Guys, you and I, if you're white, we don't understand what layers and layers of systemic, of institutional oppression and injustice going back centuries. We don't understand what that feels like. And I'm having my heart broken as I talk to some of my friends to try and understand and listen and learn, and without being defensive or saying, oh, don't come near my statues or don't come near my culture. Without being defensive, just staying open for a moment. Nobody is saying all lives don't matter. Of course they do. But we are saying some lives are in greater danger than others. And that has to make a difference in not just what we believe, but in what we do. And here's another big idea. Proximity is not friendship. Proximity is not friendship. How do we move up that continuum? Knowing people who are not like you is never going to move us up the racism continuum. Facts don't change our mind. Only experience does that. So I want to say to you guys, I want to say to all of you, whatever your color, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your diversity, I want to say to all of you, okay, pursue people who don't look like you. Listen to people who don't look like you. Learn from people who don't look like you. And don't just know people, become friends. I want to show you some of my friends on screen today. Is that okay? This is Festo. And I met Festo 2 years ago in Texas. We were at a conference together. And he'd never been on an airplane in his life. He lives in Arusha in Tanzania. And he flew for the first time in this metal tube and was absolutely petrified. And we were sharing a house together, and it was an incredible house. We all had our own bathroom and all fancy mod cons, and it was a mind-blowing experience. But we became really close. And he said to me, I want you to come to Tanzania, not thinking that I would come, although I would go. But last June I went, and I spent 10 days with Festo in Tanzania and with his family. And I listened, and I'm learning such a lot from this man. Such a lot. And then this guy here is Pastor Ebenezer, and I spoke to him a couple of nights ago, and this is me and Ebenezer in India in just a few months ago. He pastors a ministry in India. And I met him again a couple of years ago, and I was speaking at a conference, quite a big conference, and him and his wife came and said hello afterwards, and lovely couple, and they wanted a photograph with one of the speakers, and there's me thinking, oh, look, I'm the preacher, and blah, blah, blah. And he asked me to go out, again, not thinking I would, but I did, and I've been twice, and I've learned such a lot from this man of God. There was me thinking he was this guy and his wife from this little situation in India. And when I arrived there, and he showed me the Bible college that he's got, and the children's home, and the 65 churches that he's planted. And he told me on Thursday that last Sunday, 76,000 people watched their service on the TV station. I'm learning a lot from my friend Ebenezer. And then here is Loretta. And Loretta is the twin sister of a really good friend of ours, Laura, from our church. But Loretta lives in Accra, Ghana. And Alison and I were in Ghana last year on a compassion trip. And so we got the joy of spending an evening with Loretta and a meal and learning about each other's culture. And guys, this is so, so rich. And then here's my very, very good friend, Carl. And Carl's from Wolverhampton. Okay, all the others are all those places. But Carl's from Wolverhampton, and we've known each other for 30 years. And in the middle is a conversation that me and him had just a few weeks ago. And I would love you and encourage you to check it out. It's on Instagram or it's on our Facebook page. I'd love you to check that conversation out. And I could go on. These are people who don't look like me, who don't have the same life experience, but I am learning so much from these friends. And I believe that, guys, that as we learn, as we listen, as we posture ourselves right, maybe in the eyes of someone else who doesn't look like us, maybe you and I would encounter the divine. Take a look at this.
I have an 8:15 ethics course that I teach. In order to get there on time, I take my car to the train station, I take the train to the bus stop, and then I take the bus to the university. And for 3 days a week, for 3 hours, for the first time in my life, I'm the minority. Have you ever been in a new situation before? A place that jars you out of your normal routine just enough to get a real glimpse at who you are. I've been appalled at the emotions I've felt, and the unconscious hand on my wallet confirms what I never wanted to admit. There are plenty of open seats, but I just can't seem to scoot away from my discomfort. In fact, instead of viewing the entire bus as a space full of diverse and wonderful people, all of whom are mothers and brothers and sisters with love and with aspirations and with dreams, I viewed it as a hostile environment, full of the other, those who can't be trusted. As I reflected on this, I started looking inward. What was the cause of my anxiety? I came out with something surprising. It wasn't my beliefs in God. I believed in a creative and loving God who gives every human being dignity and worth. It wasn't my upbringing. My parents had loved diversity. My church had valued diversity. It wasn't my morals. Of course, racism and discrimination wasn't going to bring about the kingdom of God, the ethics that I believed in. But then it hit me. My problem wasn't my beliefs in God. It wasn't some evil seed deep down in my heart. It was simpler. It was much more profound than that. The problem was with my geography. You see, I'm simply not around people who aren't like me. I live in the suburbs, making sure that I'm not the minority. I eat in places where people are like me. I make friends with people who are just like me. I have a few token friends who are racially different, and I have all kinds of superficial reasons to justify my insulated life. And in all these ways, I'm nothing like Jesus. This is exactly what Christianity means by the incarnation. It's not a complicated doctrine about the nature of Jesus. It's not a complicated recipe of how many parts human to how many parts divine. It's a profound statement about the relationship between love and geography. If we believe we can love like Jesus from afar, haven't we rendered the coming of Christ a waste? So yes, it is true that having a God that becomes human is messy, that it might make him look weak and unremarkable. That's also the power of the gospel. The beauty of a God whose love wins out over reputation, whose desire for relationships wins out over the awkwardness of a God in human dress. The gospel is about a God who came down to sit next to us on the bus.
The gospel is about a God who came to sit down next to us on the bus. We're different. We're different, and yet God reached over all of those divides to love us in the person of Jesus Christ. That's what Jesus is all about. That's who Jesus is. And maybe if this morning you or today or whenever you're watching this, you're not sure of who Jesus is, then we want to ask you to really hang with us through this series. You know, that as we go through search history, you're going to see all these different aspects of Jesus. But today, what does Jesus say about racism to every single one of us? What's the response in our heart? Michelle Obama said this: it's up to all of us, black, white, everyone, no matter how well-meaning we think we might be, to do the honest, uncomfortable work of rooting it out. It starts with self-examination and listening to those whose lives are different from our own. But it doesn't end there. She says this: it ends with justice, compassion, and empathy that manifests in our lives and on our streets. Can I just say, Lifecentral guys, I love the fact that we're a multicultural church. I wish we were more multicultural than we are. And if that upsets some of you out there, I'm sorry, but it's just who I believe Jesus is. And Jesus has crossed every single barrier, every single wall of hostility. He's all about oneness. He's all about unity, which is not uniformity. It's not all being the same. It's about this richness of expression, and we long for the day when every single aspect of who we are as a church is a full expression of the kingdom of God, which is every tribe, every tongue, every color, every race together in one name, Jesus. So, how are you going to respond today? Let me give you 3 practical things that you can do right now. You can say to Jesus right now. Number 1, search my heart. Jesus, search my heart. Stop talking, listen, and say, God, search my heart. Where am I on the continuum? Is there hatred in my heart? Is there hurt? Maybe you're someone who's been hurt by someone who's not like you. And so maybe you're nursing some hatred for someone else because you were hurt. Or maybe it's indifference. Or maybe you're one of those people that just keeps saying, I'm not a racist. Is that enough, guys? Is that enough when Jesus calls us to move to become reconcilers? Secondly, hear my prayer. Could we just say to Jesus, hear my prayer? And I'm going to put a prayer up on the screen, and I would love you to pray this prayer with me today as I put it up. Good and gracious God, you invite us to recognize and reverence your divine image and likeness in our neighbor. Enable us to see the reality of racism and free us to challenge and uproot it from our society, our world, and ourselves. Amen. And then finally, could we say this? Use my life. Use my life to be a reconciler, to bring people together, not to keep tearing people apart. Let our words, our actions, our attitudes, our responses move us on that continuum to be reconcilers in Jesus' name. You know, as you think about this through your day and through your week, I just leave this last thought with you. I saw this on a tweet somewhere. I don't even remember who said it. They literally said this: let your love be louder than your opinions. By this will all men know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. As I have loved you, so love one another. Guys, our pastors would love to pray for you. If any of you want prayer today for this or for any other issues, you can engage with that. The chat will come on and you can do that. Maybe you can do that as we head in to our last song together. If you want prayer for anything, you know, maybe you're out there and you're hurt right now because somebody's hurt you. Maybe they've hurt you and you feel it's because of your race or because of who you are or your background or your situation. Maybe you're carrying that. But maybe you recognize that you're carrying some other stuff. Maybe you're carrying some hatred or some antagonism, or you're carrying some indifference or some apathy. Maybe today you, as I'm beginning to do more and more, say, Jesus, would you break my heart for what breaks yours? Would you break my heart for what breaks yours? I don't want to be indifferent. I want to be active. And in a moment, we're going to sing a final song together. And one of my friends and one of the girls from our worship team is going to introduce this to you. And we have said right from the beginning that we've got a big announcement for you. And we have. And it's going to come up right after this song. So stay tuned. This is a great song. And it couldn't be introduced better, I don't think, by Tanasha. Take a look.
As a church, I really urge you to really educate yourself on what's been going on nowadays. Even finding out what some of the terminology that we're using means. Also to really take into account that there are people in your church that have been feeling fear and also anger to what's been going on right now. I know that I've had battles with God end on since the beginning of this whole situation. But I know that God has designed me in a specific way, and He's given me a specific heart and a character, but most importantly, a purpose on this earth. The song Good Grace starts with, people come together, strange as neighbors, our blood is one. How important, just that first paragraph in the song Good Grace, how it starts with people come together, strange as neighbors, our blood is one. How important it is to realize that regardless of how different we are, regardless of the color of our skin, regardless of our gender, regardless of our age, regardless of anything, we come together, strange as neighbors, and our blood is one. We go to a church where everyone has different experiences and different color schemes. It's now being able to really appreciate that, because God really designed us, each and every one of us, in His perfect image. This is Good Grace.
Come together, strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. Children of generations, of every nation, of kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from.
children. Clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus.
Come we sing, swing wide, all ye heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Oh, come on, swing wide, all ye heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All these children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Come on, we cry out. Swing wide, all ye heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All these children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in his blood. Oh, sing his name, Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come.
What an amazing song. And you know, there will be a day, and hopefully it won't be too long when we're back in that room singing songs like that together. But hey, until that day, we got work to do, guys. We got work to do to see these walls, these barriers pulled down. Search my heart, hear my prayer, use my life. Guys, thank you for hanging with us today. I know it's gone a little longer than normal, but I just went a little bit passionate on that and just expanded on that. And hopefully this has helped you. It's a start. It's a start for many of us maybe to have a conversation and with Jesus and with one another. And I want to encourage you to share this link, share this talk with other people as well. Let's be a people that want to move on that continuum and bring down these walls so that we can be one as Jesus says that we are. Guys, we have a big announcement for you today, and that big announcement is this, that from next Sunday, July the 5th, our service time is moving. We're moving it back an hour, and it's going to be 10:30 every Sunday. The reason for that is that we feel it's a much better time to connect with families, and as summer comes and as life opens up and as people start going away on holiday or going out for lunch, then actually we were getting towards 1 o'clock. And so we feel it's better for families, better for the vast majority of people. I know teenagers, you've got to get up an hour earlier on a Sunday, but you can do it. You can do it, honestly, and it will help you because September is around the corner when real life gets back to normal a little bit. So anyway, next Sunday, 10:15 is the pre-service, and we go live at 10:15, and then our service will be 10:30 from next Sunday until further notice. Secondly, thank you so much for those of you that give financially. We're able to do this. We're able to do kids' tribes this afternoon. We're able to do cruise stuff with our young people. We're able to help the elderly. We're able to help food bank. We're able to serve our community because of your financial giving. And guys, thank you so much for those of you that have been giving online. If you don't know how to do that, there's going to be something come up on the screen now. You can scan the QR code or go to our website and you can go to the giving page there. Also, you can go to our website, fill in the next steps card if you want to get more involved with us as a church, if you want to join one of our connect groups, if you want to fill in in a database form so that we can send you information and track with you, then we would love that, okay? Don't just click on and watch us on YouTube, but go on a journey with us in relationship. We would absolutely love that. Final thing I want to say, please don't forget 4 o'clock. If you've got kids, get your kids in the room together for Kids Tribes Live. That's going to be a brilliant event. In 2 minutes' time, you're going to head back to our post-service hangout with Andy and Laura and with our very, very good friend Mark Greenwood. It's going to be a lot of fun, but there's going to be some great stuff shared there as well. So don't run away, okay? 2 minutes and it will be with the guys in the post-service hangout. God bless you guys. Have a great day.